Today's episode features brand new guest Josh from Yellow Skunk Farms. He's created an ecosystem in his garage, and he's going to teach you how to do it, or at least how to make your garden a little more biodiverse. Check out Yellow Skunk Farms on Instagram to see more of his work, growcast.com to see all of our work and all the archives, and AC Infinity for all your grow gear needs. Use code GROWCAST15. Hello, podcast listeners. You are now listening to and watching GrowCast. I'm your host, Jordan River, and I want to thank you for tuning in again today. Go to growcast.com. There you can see all of the episodes on video. Get the entire archives up there. Plus, our seeds, our membership, our classes, it's all going down at growcast.com. Make sure to sign up for the newsletter. We've got some big giveaways going down in there. Today, we got a brand new episode, brand new guest. Very excited to speak to Josh from Yellow Skunk Farms today. We're talking about biodiversity. We're talking about what could be the most beautiful garden on Instagram right now. So let's bring on our guest. Let's waste no time here. What's up, Josh? How are you doing, man? Thank you for coming on the show.
Bud. Thank you for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, listen, I saw your garden on Instagram, absolutely fell in love, as thousands of people have. We'll get into all the biodiversity and your build out and all that in just a second. But for the first time viewers and first time listeners, can you talk a little bit about yourself? How'd you get started growing? How'd you get started in cannabis? And then how'd you get started on this crazy biodiversity project of yours?
Man, well, I mean, like I said, my name's Josh. I live in Virginia. I live on a 6-acre small farm. So not really farm right now. It used to be a farm. It used to be my grandfather's farm. Me and my wife purchased the land about 3 years ago. We got married here 3 years ago. But my grandfather was a tomato farmer, and he grew peach trees and Christmas trees and a variety of different things. But he was known for tomatoes. He grew a lot of them. I can remember as a kid just picking a lot of tomatoes. So that's kind of where it all started. Virginia went legal in 2020, I think, or maybe it was 29. I don't know, somewhere around in there. But it was when COVID hit is when I really was like, I've been smoking since I was 16. It's been nonstop. Little breaks here and there, of course, for the businesses and stuff like that. But it's always been my go-to. Alcohol. I had a little alcohol spurt there that was got a little too rough. 2020 hit. I found the Future Cannabis Project. From there, I found Leighton Morrison. I found the Soil Food Web. I found Marco is Growing. I found Brian from Rubber Ducky Isopods. I found OK Calyx. All these people that were in this natural farming community, they were pushing, and I was like, okay, this is more my speed. Because at first, I did start off in pots, of course. Because if you go back on my Instagram, if you've been following me from the beginning, I had 30-gallon pots, all right, in here. And then I had a 4x4 in here, 4x4 grassroots, all grassroots living soil beds. And I realized real quick that I was sitting on a gold mine. Once I realized what they were talking about when it came to sand, silt, and clay, I didn't understand what they were talking about at first. Everybody kept saying sand, silt, and clay, and this is what Leighton was pushing. And he's like, if you don't have it in your soil, you don't really have living soil. You don't have the structure of soil. You stick a shovel down in the ground. You don't have peat moss. There's no peat moss out here. There's no perlite out here. There's none of that stuff out here. Now, I get that it's growing in pots. This is what you need. You need aeration. You need to grow in a potting mix. That's what it's called, a potting mix. But if you're doing something like what I'm doing, like to really take it to the next level, you need size. That's the end result here is you need space. These things need a home. So you got to treat it like every little species needs a home. Yeah. I had an issue with roly-polies in the but everything I had done, roly-polies were taking over. All right. Mm-hmm. That was my biggest issue. I was just like, holy shit, these things, the little gray ones, the rubber, like isopods, they're isopods, but they're little gray little bastards, they're little roll-ups that you find breaking down this wood. If you go outside, you lift up a rock, you lift up a log, boom, there they are by the
Yeah, and
thousand.
they're great for that, but they can also get out of control. You let
That's
those
what I'm saying.
isopods boom, and you better not put in any young plants. Anything that's not like really hardened off, anything that's slightly tender, those isopods will gobble it up. But Josh, you make a really good point, because there's the differences between indoor living soil setups and planting outside in the ground. There's a big chasm between those two spaces. There's so much that goes on when you plant into solid soil into the earth. And then there's the indoor living soil system, like the one that I run, which is also good, but very, very different. And it has to do with the amount of diversity. Like you said, there's kind of a chasm there. Your garden has bridged that gap. That's really how I'd like to start this off, which is you have done the best job of taking that I've seen of taking outside and putting it inside. I mean, we'll just show it off here for the audio listeners. I do recommend you go to growcast.com/episodes just so you can see this. But you built out a stone foundation with like a pond river type thing here. I know I'm probably misspeaking. I'll get you to explain this. We're looking at turtles swimming by. We're looking at fish swimming by. Multitude of different types of plants. You've got different species of cannabis, different cultivars of cannabis growing in here. This is just crazy. It's breathtaking what we're looking at here. And that's really what you've done, I think, Josh, is you've done a better job than anyone else I've seen at trying to take the massive complexities of outdoor, in-ground, real growing in an ecosystem and bring it inside a room. So I just want to say great job. And I think that's kind of what you're doing here. Is that a correct assessment?
I appreciate that. That's exactly what. Yep, you hit the nail right on the head. That's where I was going with the whole idea in my head. This was planned out, not overnight. This took, years, But the idea of, like I told you, I had the koi pond outside that me and my granddad built, 23 years ago. So I've always had that outside. I've always, when I've come over here, I've always gone and gravitated to that koi pond. I've always maintained it. I just recently got rid of, before we moved in here, I got rid of it was a 120-gallon saltwater aquarium.
Whoa.
And it had the sub tank, you had your sub tank underneath your aquarium. And that's where really all the life is. And, you have your beautiful fishes, but when you open up that cabinet underneath, that's what's eating all the
Yeah.
That's what's really cycling the biology, that aquatic biology through the tank. You never take all of it out. You only take some of it out. This is why you only do a partial, water change. Once I realized that water changes in an aquarium do everything, they fix everything. As long as what you're replacing with has the right mineral in it. You're not replacing it with dirty water. You're replacing it with fresh, clean water, and that usually fixes all the problems that I ever had in an aquarium setting.
The GrowCast Grand Pheno Hunt is back for round 3. We're doing it again, everybody. Powered by Hygrozyme, this is the coolest contest in cannabis cultivation. We look through all the GrowCast members' gardens as they hunt through their Pheno Hunt seeds, and we select a whole bunch of prize winners and one grand prize winner who walks away with $1,000 cold, hard cash. Thank you to Hygrozyme. So all you got to do is make sure you're in membership. Go to growcast.com/hunt to see all the details of the hunt. Basically, just have 6 plants vegged up and sexed up and ready to go by November 1st. We all flip into flower November 1st. We update our progress in the Grand Pheno Hunt chat, and me and Rich go and personally visit the top 3 finalists. I actually just got back from visiting round 2's finalists, and it's amazing meeting these growers and getting to enjoy their phenotypes with them and really get to see who got lucky and got that unicorn. So once again, growcast.com/hunt. Make sure you're in membership. That's growcast.com/membership. What are you waiting for? Just jump in there anyways. You get the garden support, you get the content, you get the Grand Pheno Hunt. I'd love to see you on the inside. Make sure you're in there by Halloween weekend. We're all flipping to flower. Growcast.com/hunt, growcast.com/membership, and huge thank you to Hygrozyme for powering the Grand Pheno Hunt. best of luck, hunters. Someone's winning $1,000.
Once I learned Marco had won a grand championship up here in DC in like 23, I think it was his Divine Pine, I was like, okay, these plants can handle a lot more than what people think. I mean, people are delicate. They think these things are babies, and they want to be delicate. And it's true in some cases, but the ones that you want are strong, can deal with a lot of stress, and can produce some killer cannabis in the right conditions.
That stress is important too, right? I mean, that goes back to the outside growing. There's a lot of stress outside,
Tons
and
of it.
it's kind of like that old meme with like the dog that's like all beefy and buff, and then the dog
Yeah.
that's all sad and like weak, and the beefy buff dog's like outdoor plants, and they're like, "Oh, this concrete is cozy," and then the sad dog is like indoor plants, and it says like, "Is this tap water dechlorinated?" And
Exactly.
it's so true.
Exactly.
So it's really interesting.
It's a different animal, it's a totally
Yeah.
different. And then once I realized that, the technology and the lighting has gotten so that I can adjust, and I was like, okay, all right, now we can really play, with some stuff. Now I just got these Grandmasters, that's got these 4-channel. I can adjust, and I got daylight, I got sunrise, sunset. I've got, 90 different presets that I can play with. It's
Spectrum
crazy.
tuning. You do
Yeah.
all that to mimic nature in this place?
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, I haven't quite figured it. Like, I burnt the land race. Like, that's why the big land race that everybody's been looking at. Yeah, that big one right there where we're looking at. I burnt the shit out of that thing. Just I didn't know any better.
Wow. Jeez. I mean, again, for the audio listeners, we're looking through this garden. You've got massive plants growing out of what is essentially a pond. I mean, you're pulling out like algae that's present. There's little snails, it appears.
Yeah, that's snail. Yeah, I got shrimp in there, clams, shrimp, crabs. Uh, yeah,
What
there's all.
problems have you run into here? The too high light
Oh,
intensity is fine. I mean, people make very, very powerful and efficient LED lights now. You said you got the Grandmaster level, so that doesn't surprise me. A lot of times we're not hitting 100% just because the lights are so good, right? And it's better to run them on a lower percentage anyways because they last longer. So, like lighting aside, though, have you run into any issues with like?
oh.
I love that laugh. What have been some of the hurdles for having all of this biodiversity?
All right, let's start from the beginning first. It's all based on Layton's horizontal soil system.
Mm-hmm.
And once I realized that I had what I needed, what he was talking about, because I live on a freshwater reservoir. Okay, so a reservoir is, basically drinking water that the state or the city of Newport News has designated for drinking water, and they pump it out of this basically big ass pond. Okay, so I live in the tidewater area. We're surrounded by rivers, and the ocean's only 30 minutes away, and so I have a lot of sand, silt, and clay in my. But I also have that aquatic biology that's in that reservoir. So if you were if you were walking up out of the reservoir and you were coming up onto the beach, so to speak, that's what I'm talking about. That's the sand, the silt, and the clays. You can't really see the clay unless you need a microscope almost to see the clays. The clays are so fine in particle size. They're the smallest of the particles that I'm going to find in right on that edge of that reservoir, that stream, so to speak. So where I'm getting it from is a heavy, thick, organic layer on top. So it's where this stream comes out of the ground, and all the trees and everything have just been falling on it for, however long, thousands of years. And right where that stream pushes out of the ground, I noticed that it was clean. Like, and I stuck my fingers down there, and it was clean sand, silt, and clay. But everything around it, just far enough to where that was pushing out, just had enough force to push that organic matter out the way, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? But underneath that was just as clean as it could be, fresh sand, silt, and clay. Didn't stink. I was like, light bulb went off. That's when Leighton's whole idea of like, look, take this sand, silt, and clay and lay it out on a tarp. Or if you have an asphalt driveway, which is what I have, I spread it out all over an asphalt driveway and let the sun cook it out. And in the summertime, it don't take long. A couple 90-degree days and it's cooked. As long as you're turning it a little bit and raking it out. And then I shovel that all up. And that's what I'm using for the bottom of my pond. So indoors, that's the layer, that big sandstone, all that sandstone clay. But I've cleaned it. I basically composted it with the sun, cleaned out all that funk, that swamp smell that you're going to get from all that organic matter that's already in it. You know what I mean? So you got to cook all that out. So my first issue, but now we're getting to that sandstone clay. That's where everything started. So I got cobblestone. So I lay flat as fine cobblestone like you would walk on in a city.
Yep.
All right. That goes on first. Then we pour pea gravel all over top of that. Okay.
Sure.
So then in the pea gravel comes the sand, silt, and clay. Then on top of that layer comes the little bit of red clay. So that's where the red clay comes in. So you have to have this clay. This clay is where it's going to give us the regeneration because it's so rich in mineral and nutrient that 4 inches, that's the money. That's where we need to be. And that's what takes a little bit of time to build in a system, like this. So that's where we're headed. But the biggest problem that I had was water retention. So like, how was I going to get the water because that was the whole idea in my head was, how do I make this regenerate, but how do I also not have to water the plants? I don't want to have to water my plants, so how do I get them to wick the water up? I put some of this sandstone clay in a bucket, of course. I've been constantly bringing it up in a bucket, and I noticed that once I dried it out and put it back in the bucket, I hit it with some water, and it just took it, man. It just finally it absorbed it enough to where I was filling up the bucket. And I was like, damn, I must have put 15 gallons of water in a 5-gallon bucket. I was like, that's that's what I can put in the creek. If it holds that amount of water and it wicks that amount of water. So I laid it out on a table, a little bit of dry stuff out on a table, and I put a rock and I filled, and then I just poured water on the table, and the water ran to it, and I watched the water just that sand silk, it just wicked that water just right on up on top of the rock.
You almost kind of described like a gradient. You know what I mean? Because you're dealing with these different ratios of sand, silt, and clay, which is what all soil is, a different ratio of those things. But really in the center, like you said, is that loam. And it sounds like that's what you're dealing with on your property. It sounds like that's really what you're harvesting. And like you said, when you have these different ecosystems that butt up against each other, there's this like gradient across it as you approach the beach. I think you said where it's going to be more sandy. There's this gradient there that slowly changes the structure. Is that what you planted your canna plants straight into?
The soil, I make my own IMO 3, 4, and 5, but I purchased the soil already made from a local person here who's actually a school teacher, Big Worm Organics. And I found him through Marco because Marco lives here in Virginia as well. All these guys live here in Virginia that I deal with. And because I try and keep it local if I'm going to spend the money, So, and the reason I start with a premium soil is because that's where I want to be, when I put in fresh cannabis plants, is I want them to have that initial, because like I said, it's going to take time for me to build. So my whole idea is to start off with the good stuff, I amend it, but then never really have to amend it again. Just my IMO with rabbit. I have rabbit that we have here on the property. So my own worm castings, a lot of ferments. So we're in the process of our 2 years on our FAA bucket. We're coming in on about a year on mostly everything else. But I just started doing fig ferments because I got a big ass fig tree this year. So we've got figs breaking down right now. I've already done the fig leaf, so we're doing the fig fruit now. I've got some over there. It's pretty. It's pretty. I'll show you.
That's cool, though. Please, bring it on over. You're making your own ferments that go into this space. For the YouTube viewers and for those at growcast.com, he's flipping around his camera and showing the space that he's in, which is like kind of looks like it's sealed all around almost.
It's my garage. It's 500 square feet. So this is the fig. This is the fig.
Some fig ferment, like a golden. Oh man, that looks like honey. That looks delicious. First of all, does that smell good?
It does. It smells delicious.
It looks like honey. Is what it looks like, raw honey that's kind of crystallized. That's beautiful. Wow, very very cool, man. You've really taken this to the nth degree, as they say.
And then this next to it, Jerusalem artichoke tip, the flower tips. Trying to get it off.
Wow, interesting.
So the flower tips,
so just the flowers of the artichoke.
Yeah, just the flower. Yeah. So you can see it's.
Now, don't go making any jokes in the comments.
And it smells. It smells like artichoke. It's got a.
Hey, I love artichokes.
It's not a pungent smell at all. And then we got EM1, activated EM1. Just 3 days old. And then I've got my lactic acid bacteria. It's only about 3 days old. Cheese is still on it.
You've got these in like vintage lemonade dispensers. They're like beautiful glass.
And they hold it.
That's ridiculous. Your garden is ridiculous.
This is weed.
I mean that in the best possible way.
Fermented plant juice. This is weed fermented plant juice. I just stuck my damn banana that I ate in there earlier. But if you open this, stinks. This smells like
Sure.
So it's very used very sparingly. Yeah, that stinks. But if you don't take the top off and if you just squirt it out the edge here, just hit it with that, just a little bit in there, pour it in a bucket of water, squirt it in there. I mean, it makes the whole place smell like shit for, about 2 or 3 hours, but then it gets good.
So where are we at now? You're showing the garden, and obviously these plants are coming to an end. Some of them are harvested. Some of them are huge and bending over with their hulking
this is let me get up. This is that land race I was talking about. We've been slowly chopping this down. You can see how it's just because it's only like, well, it was only like 4 inches from the light, maybe 3 inches from the light, and I just burn it to crisp. It's kind of why I'm not messing with this big one. I'm just chopping and dropping. So what I'm doing here, you can see, is that I'm taking this and I'm just chopping and dropping it.
Letting it decompose.
Yep. All matter goes right back into my soil beds. So what we got going on here is the pond runs from over there and it runs up the hill, back down, comes back around, down through here, and then back into the pond.
So it's a circulating pond system here.
It's circulating. Basically, it's a creek system that circulates from the pond up a mountain and then spits out up here at the top and then travels down. In the creek system is the filtration system. So we replaced the filtration box that you normally would have in a pond, outdoor pond, with the creek system. You add roots, growing living roots to the water, and eventually you get clean water. This is the new structure that we're building for the turtles. And we just created this cave-like.
That's their turtle doorway? They're showing a
turtle doorway, yeah. They're going to be able to come in underneath here like a cave. This is terrestrial. This is the dry side, so to speak. This is the wet side. So this is all the wet where all the plants go. We want to separate the turtles from where our plants are going to be because they do fuck up.
So going back to that, let's talk about those turtles. What did they do? Did they start nibbling on your buds or what?
No, they won't start nibbling on you, but they will take small plants though. You know what I mean? They will take small plants and they will They do eat that diachondra, that diachondra grass that cascades over into the pond, and they nibble on it. They love that stuff.
God, such a beautiful garden. Yeah. So this circulating creek that you have waters all of those plants that you grew just through the wicking process of sand, silt, and clay.
Yeah,
You didn't have to do any additional irrigation or, I mean, I guess they are planted rather close when you look at it. There's a lot of soil space, but again, for the audio listeners, it's planted pretty close to that quote unquote creek, that indoor creek. And
yeah.
it's just beautiful, man. It looks like they're definitely not wanting for water. They're praying in all the videos that you're posting. That's amazing that the system just wicks like that.
That's what we were talking about earlier about my first problems. All right, so it was wicking way too much. Here's the trick to this. There's a trick to all of this, and the trick is that how do I get this water, let's say, wick and penetrate the soil pockets the way we need to, the way it needs to be, without overdoing it to where we flood the system and then we have a mess on our hands. And that's where
Hmm.
the horizontal soil system came in. Okay. And that's where we started building layers. And that kind of solved that problem. But then I was like, well, how am I going to get the soil to wick, the water that I need? So that's where Big Worms organic mix came in, because it has that lava, it has crushed lava rock in it. Picture this. Picture my soil, this soil right here, sandwiched in between a layer of sand, silt, and clay, and sand, silt, and clay. Okay, so there's a layer at the bottom, and then there's a small, thin layer at the top. And that layer is connected to the creek. So
Mhm.
that layer is once it starts wicking now, it wicks, and it wicks right on up into the top, and it'll wick it all the way to the rock wall.
The plant's acting as an exit, obviously pulling that water out and putting it into the air. That's really cool, man. It's a delicate balance here. Obviously,
Yeah.
you now you have turtles and mud flies and everything going everywhere. Where do you go from here? You just took down a run. Are you gonna plant more of the
Oh yeah.
same or
Y- y-
new or what?
No, we've got a whole new line coming in. That's the whole idea behind this, is to showcase and inspire people to do more than just a pot. You know what I mean? There's more to this. And if you want to take, if you have a hobby, if you want a hobby, you know what I mean? Like myself, like I wanted a hobby.
You got one, Josh.
And organic gardening, outdoors is a great hobby, but in the wintertime, I don't have anything. Like my fish pond shuts down outside. I don't do anything. I don't feed it. I don't have to clean it. I don't do anything. Basically, they just go into hibernation and that's it. Well, I was like, well, I'm missing out on 4 or 5 months of growing. I could get a whole run in if I just bring it indoors.
I can see what you're saying as far as like, you can take it a step further if you want to go down that path and become a bit of a plant wizard like yourself. And it was more than just bringing it inside, Josh. I liked what you said about how you're missing out on those winter months. And I can only imagine you waking up on a cold winter morning and coming out here with a cup of coffee and a joint.
All this came about from just starting something. I just started. And that's the biggest advice I can give anybody, is just, if you got an idea, just start. And then all those little ideas will just compound on you, and it'll just grow out of control. And next thing you know, you're sitting here with a damn ecosystem in your basement, growing plants that you never knew you would even grow in conditions like this.
That's our show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Josh from Yellow Skunk Farms. Of course, growcast.com for all of the archives, all of the episodes on video there, plus membership, seeds, events. Come and check out the Growcast event schedule. We've got the Natural Farming Immersive coming up October 11th and 12th. Don't miss that class. DM me if you're traveling from out of state. I have a little discount for you. And this is one you're going to want to travel for. Everybody, it'll change your life. So go and check that out. Quick shout out to Rooted Leaf Nutrients. If you're not totally satisfied with your nutrients, rootedleaf.com, use code GROWCAST. Grab their silica skin and start using that as your silica supplement, or grab their solar rain if you don't have a good foliar. It's going to absolutely make your plants explode with growth. Rootedleaf.com, code GROWCAST, 20% off. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you. Be safe out there. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
But we want to separate the turtles from where our plants are going to be, because they do fuck shit up.